Well, they're states of consciousness. They're all altered states of consciousness. I mean, the reason language has the effects that it has, I mean, in literature, is because it's recapitulating music. I mean, poetry rhymes or is metered so you'll remember it. And so what's behind the rhythms of poetry are these mnemonic techniques that are pure sound in a way. So it's this mixture of sound and meaning that is as musical in a way, or certainly as sonic, as it is rational. It's a rational narrative, or maybe an irrational narrative, but it's also something that's going on a purely sensory, sensual level. So it is an altered state of consciousness. And in that sense, certainly a drug made out of sensibility, made out of our senses, and that occupies our space, removes us from our own space, and lets the artist inhabit our space, the way music inhabits your space, or poetry inhabits your space, or great prose inhabits your space in a good cause. It alters your consciousness. I don't know, it is one of those things that keep reminding me of the concept of original sin. I mean, which is so hateful and corny, the idea of original sin. You know, and you really struggle to lose that concept as soon as you lose organized religion. But there's something and some quality in life, some kind of weakness or craving that one doesn't seem to be able to get away from. I mean, addicts have often talked about their substance as something that almost has a life of its own, as a tempter. And, it's the substitution for everything else. I think the drug is whatever you want it to be. It's something that will take you away from your present space and bring you pleasure that's somehow free, that you don't have to pay for, which of course is illusionary, because there isn't anything that you don't have to pay for. One of the strangest things about life, I think, is how absolutely nothing is free. The old saw about there being no free lunch, it's uncanny. It's weird how true that is. That everything has to be paid off on one end or the other, and so drugs are like anything else. You just don't get away with anything. I think it has been represented, variously and well by writers like, well, for example, like Burroughs, and even writers who don't directly write about addiction in a way discover the principles, the truths that addiction leads you to. I mean, addiction is full of, as Burroughs knew, it's full of dreadful pain. It's also full of comedy. I mean, every addict's story is, of course, tragic, a tale of destruction, but it's also has its constantly ludicrous side, so that it really is the human being as fool, and one knows that it's a mug's game, that you can't get ahead of it, that it's never quite going to pay off. But I don't know, you always sympathize somehow, at least I always sympathize with somebody after they're high. It's a distressing thing to see somebody get to worship their own asshole in this awful way, that all they're doing is trying to generate satisfaction, and yet in a way you kind of have to sympathize with the drive for for ecstasy with, you know, when I was really young and dumb. I thought, you know, thinking of the great musicians, you know, I thought, oh, well, the junkies are holy. I mean, I don't think that anymore, but when I thought of the great jazz musicians who had succumbed, I thought there was a kind of holiness about this. That the glamour of it, I think, entraps a lot of people. And, you know, it might have entrapped me, I think, if I hadn't been lucky. Oh, just to get in and out of that world, you know, more or less, to the extent that I think I've escaped the world of addiction. I didn't, you know, I haven't, at least at this point, I have not been trapped by the world of addiction. I'm still alive. I can still count to 10. I can still put one word in front of another, and I think, you know, to that extent, I've been lucky, because some people have been destroyed, either by the work. I mean, in the case of a writer, writing is lonely. It's one of Hemingway said about writing that it's a way of ending the day, and I mean that's so true, because you're by yourself, you get absolutely jacked up. You get in an intense emotional state. Then the next thing to do is kind of come down and go to sleep, and work it off somewhere. But most of the time you're in a room by yourself. You know, writers spend more time in rooms, staying awake in quiet rooms than they do hunting lions, right, in Africa. So it's a bad life for a, you know, for a person, because it's so lonely, and because it consists of such highs and lows, and not always, there's not always anywhere to take these emotional states. I was writing in a college library once in the middle of the night, and I was working on Dog Soldiers. Worked myself up into a state. I'd rewritten this thing about 8 times, and I was crying. And I went outside my little room into the dark library shelves, and I'm weeping and carrying on and talking to myself, and I run into the security guard out in the stacks. He's encountered this maniac, which is me. Started talking to myself out there, and I just thought, what is the spectacle of this, you know, distraught character, this loony wandering through the shelves, talking to himself. So, you know, it's a hard life to sustain, or it's a life that's tough to sustain without, you know, without falling prey to some kind of, you know, some kind of beguiling diversion that's not good for you.